Hi there and welcome to Studio SN. My name is Sara Naumann and today we're card making with PaperArtsy Infusions. PaperArtsy Infusions are great for adding color and style to your card backgrounds and to your focals, as I've done here on this card. And you can see the bright, bold, brayered background here, as well as the softer watercolor look that I've got on the card focal. Now, both effects are really easy to get, so we'll take a look at both processes. But first, let's talk about infusions. So let me show you the bottles that the infusions come in. So here I'm using two. I'm using Slime and I'm using Sunset Beach. Now, these are color stain powders, and when they interact with a liquid like water or a liquid glaze, the crystals will dissolve into really bright colors. Now, these are different from other color powders because they actually have two components. They have a dye color pigment plus a walnut crystal stain, which means that you get color plus you get a really beautiful vintage effect as well. Now, you probably notice I've got something going on here on the lids of my infusions, and I'm going to talk about why I have that on here as well when we get into the video. So let me set aside my infusions for just a second. I'm going to move aside my card and bring in my cardstock, and we can get to playing. Now, the cardstock I'm working with is a watercolor cardstock, and I'll show you the package that I have here. Now, this is a rough watercolor, which means that it's got a texture to it, but because it's watercolor cardstock, it means that I'm able to add some watery mediums and it's not going to warp or buckle my cardstock. Now, this is a 200 GSM or 95-pound weight, so you can see it's not a really heavyweight cardstock, but it's just perfect for adding to cards, and because it is watercolor, it means that I can add some medium on here. So I'm going to start with my Sunset Beach here, and I'm working onto a craft sheet. That's going to be important. The other thing I want to have is my satin glaze, and this is also from PaperArtsy. This is going to mix with my infusions, and it's going to give me a really soft and pretty effect. You can use your infusions with water, and I'm going to show you some samples of that in a little bit too. Now, the other thing I want to have on hand is my brayer. You guys know I love working with my brayer, and this is how I will apply my medium onto my cardstock. Okay, so first I'm going to slide aside my cardstock, and I'm going to take off this little bit of washi tape that's on the lid. Now, the lids don't come with these holes poked in them, but the suggestion from Leandra at PaperArtsy is to take an awl or maybe a paper poker or paper piercer and punch a hole through that aluminum cap. That's going to mean that when you sprinkle your infusions out onto your craft sheet or onto your paper, that you're not dumping out too much. Normally, of course, you would open up the cap and dump it out from here, but that's going to be way, way, way more color than you need. So then I just put that little bit of tape on the top, and that kind of holds everything together. So I've got a little bit of the Sunset Beach on my craft sheet. I'm going to add some of the liquid glaze. You don't need very much. Of course, the more you add, the more muted your color will be. And I'm going to take my brayer and just roll this through the color like so. And that's going to mix the two of them together. And then working onto my cardstock, I'm just going to brayer this in both directions, up and down and around. And that's going to give me a really pretty, colorful background, but I think you can also see beside that orangey red that I've got some brown in here, and that is from the walnut stain that is in the crystal. So this is going to give me even more of a beautiful dimensional effect. Now, I can leave this as it is. I can add more. I wanted to let some of that texture show through here and some of that white show through as well. But I do want to add some more color, and here I'm going to be working with Slime. They all have really fun names on these infusions. So with the slime, what I'm going to do is just tap this gently onto my cardstock. And you can use a bit of a restrained approach with this, again, because that colored powder is just so rich and concentrated. So I've got my powder on here. Now I'm working with a little bit of water in a mister bottle, and I'm simply going to spritz this. I'm going to spritz it once, and I'm going to allow the powders to react to the water. If you flood this with water straight away, you may end up with more of a blended effect than what you want. So I'll add a little bit more. That's where you can really see some of that green popping up. Now I can let this dry, I can let it air dry, I can zap it with a heat tool. If I want to, I can come back and add some more in areas that I maybe didn't get enough into. Spritz a little bit more water. You can let the color run and drip if you want to. You can also just grab a tissue or a paper towel and blot some of that, and then you get a really pretty soft effect as well. So this is how easy it is to create a really simple background from your infusions. So while this is drying, and it won't take very long to dry, I'm going to bring in my stamped image, and I'm going to do a little bit of watercolor painting on here. So I've stamped my dragonfly onto the same watercolor cardstock. Now, because I'm stamping directly onto this cardstock and the cardstock is textured, it's not going to be as crisp of a stamped image as normally would. That's okay in this situation, that's what I wanted. But I did want to show you if I stamp the same image onto white uncoated cardstock with the same ink, that's what I'm going to get. So I've got two very different effects. Now the stamps that I'm using are also from PaperArtsy, and this is the ESN 21, and I'm using that beautiful dragonfly collage on here. So one thing to keep in mind when you're stamping, you do want to use a permanent ink pad. I'm using the Versamark in Onyx Black, and that's what I recommend for this. So what I'll do is just simply wipe off some of that infusion on here, and then I'm going to add a little bit more onto my craft sheet. I'm going to mix this with water. So I'm putting on just a tad bit of the Sunset Beach. You can see my little pile here. Bring back in slime and add it in a different pile over to the side. And then I'm going to bring back my water mister, and I'm going to spritz a little bit of water next to those powder puddles. If I spritz it directly into the powder, it will kind of kick back and can sort of spatter where you maybe don't want it to go. Now I'm working with a really fine small paintbrush. I'm going to pick up a little, a fine dirty paintbrush, pick up a little bit of color, some of that slime, and you can see again how very concentrated that is. And I'll just come in and color in my stamped image. I can add a bit more water on here if I want to, and just to scribble in some color on here. I'm not worried about it being perfect because I'm going to spritz this again when I'm done, and that's going to cause the colors to bleed, which is the effect that I want here. So I'm just filling in the wings and the body of the dragonfly. And then what I'll do, grab my mister bottle and spritz. And again, let that color react. Now I have a little bit more than I wanted over here on this wing, so I'm gonna come right in and blot it and kind of lift off some of that color. But I did want that color to bleed and move around in there. So what I'll do, again, a little bit more water. I'm gonna come back for that Sunset Beach. This is where working onto the craft sheet is really nice. It gives you that instant palette. Add a little bit more of the Sunset Beach on top. Because I'm working on the watercolor cardstock, I have a little bit more leeway with adding so much water onto my piece. Kind of dab this down here. Again, spritz a little bit with my water mister and blot. Blotting is going to stop the movement of the water and the color, but it's still going to allow that vibrancy on there. And then you can keep working this as much as you want to. You can stop whenever you're ready, and you will have a dragonfly colored to match the background of your card. So I'm just going to quickly clean this up here, move it aside so I can show you a little bit more about this. And then let's talk about the actual card itself. So I'm going to bring in my finished card design. You can see that I've taken the background and simply mounted it up onto some kind of olive green cardstock, and then I've added my dragonfly image on here. Now this is just a couple of different ways that you can use the infusions. I did want to show you a sampler though, so I'll move aside my card again and just show you two quick swatches that I made. So this is using the glaze, and that's the PaperArtsy satin glaze that I've used on this. This is that brayered effect that we just saw. This is using the glaze and painting on that sunset beach. So using just a flat paintbrush, that's going to give you a different effect here. These two are the same Sunset Beach infusions mixed with water. So this is brayered on, mixed with water, and then brayered on, and then this is mixed with water and painted on using the same brush, incidentally, so it's a flat brush. So you can see straight away you're able to get some really different effects with these infusions, whether for backgrounds or for painting in your images. And of course, adding even more water on top of any of those is going to give you a completely different effect too. So coming back to the card sample as it is, one more thing I wanted to add, because I wrapped this up with some hemp twine, which has a lot of bulk to it. I added this main focal with some foam tape, just so it wouldn't buckle over the weight or the dimension of that twine on here. That's just simply wrapped around, and then everything is glued onto the card front. So this is how you can use PaperArtsy Infusions to make really fun and colorful cards, working either with your background or with your focal image if you want. I hope you enjoyed today's show. Thank you so much for joining me on Studio SN. If you like this video, I invite you to subscribe to Studio SN on YouTube, and I'll keep you updated with a new video every month. For more ideas and inspiration, please do stop by my website at saranaumann.com. Again, thank you for joining me on Studio SN, and I'll see you again next time.